Good evening, good afternoon, good morning, everybody. Welcome to our second episode of Cloudicorns, our podcast about SAP, Google Cloud, cloud in general, and all that is good. I'm here today with Diego. Hi, Diego.
Hey everyone, how's it going, guys? All good?
All good, and I'm honored, I'm super thrilled to be with two of my greatest friends, Mercedes and Silvia. Mercedes, would you like to start by introducing yourself to our audience?
Yay! Hello, guys. Hello, everybody. Hello out there. Hello, world. My name is Mercedes. I work as an SAP functional consultant since, I guess, 2004, mostly. It's been a long time. So I live in Sydney at the moment. I'm still working on SAP. I wasn't expecting this to happen for this long, but here I am, delivery lead, still implementation projects. That's what I like, not so much support. And yep, that's what I am doing at the moment in this part of the world.
Awesome. Thanks so much. I
Yep,
will go into how we all met
yep.
later. Sil?
Hi everyone. Well, my name is Silvia. I'm an ABAP developer, also from 2004. So I met Mercedes in my first job in Accenture a while ago. I started in Accenture in training, ABAP training. It was my first job there, and well, from there I did a lot of development around some companies and countries. Actually, I'm working as a freelancer for SAP in Germany. We are developing the e-document solution, standard solution that belongs to SAP. I'm actually in Buenos Aires now, but working remote. But in the past, before COVID, I was half. So I'm in Germany and half of the year in Buenos Aires. Yeah, that's
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, I hadn't realized that. So we met, the three of us were together at Deloitte implementing Walmart, I guess, in
Mm-hmm.
2006, right?
Mm, 2008, probably.
Eight. Yes, yes, that sounds more accurate. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And Sylvia, you and I, we had met earlier actually at a smaller consulting firm, and you were in another project. Yeah,
yeah.
I think we drank together
Yeah,
before we actually met and started working together.
that's true. Yes, yes, because we were not working on the same customer, we were working on the consultant company. Yeah, true.
Cool. Speaking of drinks, Mercedes, I noticed you have a mate.
Yeah. This is our signature drink here in Argentina. Well, not in Argentina, but yeah, Argentina, but not in Australia. But I still have it with me, and I bring it to the office whenever I can. And yeah, people look at it like, "What are you having?" Very strange.
How hard is to get the Sherva in Australia?
Not that hard anymore. I think we have a small community of Argentinians here in Sydney,
Mm-hmm.
where we have several shops where we can just go and buy our yerba, our little leaves. And it's like a tea for the people that do not know what this is. You, of course, you can Google everything now. But it's like having a tea without the little bags. And yeah, it keeps you awake, has good taste. We cannot share it now, unfortunately, because of the COVID-19 situation, but Argentinians share these things. So we just pour some water in and then we share it. But of course, right now, cannot be done. So have your own mate and your own hot water and drink it
And this,
alone.
and this slowly became a tutorial about Sherva and mate. This
Oh,
is
yeah, of
great.
course.
Of course, of course.
One thing that does a lot to people, Argentinians, is help you think. So you're thinking about something on your own and SIP configuration, whatever you're doing in your life, and you're drinking mate and you're thinking. And it's a very good tool, I would say.
Agree, agree. I've done a lot of debugging with mate. Currently,
Yep.
I'm drinking a Fernet with Coca, with Coke. It's yeah, and Italian drink.
Canadian edition. Yeah.
Yeah, an acquired taste that I think only Italians and Argentinians drink. But yeah, so I think we can we can start with the topic of the day, right? We've been talking about drinks a little bit, but the overall, or the main reason why I'm super excited to have Mercedes and Silvia here is related to what we spoke in our first episode with Diego, and going beyond the community that can visit Waldorf, even though Silvia works in Waldorf, literally, meaning the community that is more vocal in social media and goes to TechEd every year and that kind of stuff, but are still people who are out there implementing in the everyday. And I'm always wondering what people who are out there and are not part of the marketing machine, because I consider myself part of the marketing machine, even if I do not intend to be part of the marketing machine. What cloud is to them, and how they experience what SAP is going towards, right? So I think we can start with a little bit of background and how you both started with SAP. How what took you into the SAP world?
What happened with me? I was very bored. Believe it or not, I was technical support in AS400 systems long time ago.
Mm-hmm.
And I was looking for something more exciting, more new. And I started working with this new group, and they started to talk about SAP, and I didn't know what it was. But the only thing that I sensed is that it was the new diva of the market back then. And consultants that were included into that technology as a knowledge and implementing those things were like, this is the new thingy, you need to be in. And there was a lot of money involved in it. It was the best salaries in the market were the functional consultants of SAP. So that got my attention right away. I said, I need to get out of this very boring technology where only old people and mostly men working in that environment. So I had to get out of that. And then I started in Accenture. That is where I met Silvia, actually. And I suddenly was given this new model. I was given the opportunity to start in SAP as a functional consultant. PS, Project Systems, was the module. And it's very funny because back then PS module in Argentina was not something that was very known, or there were probably many consultants that would know how to implement it. And because no one wanted that module, they were scared of it, and it was very complex. But then they say, okay, if you want to start into SAP world, you need to take this module. And no training, nothing. Just started reading on my own, all the manuals. And that's how it all started for me. It was a journey, very interesting journey. The good thing and the interesting situation that I had back then is I had a direct line with Germany, because the module back then was not stable enough and had a couple of bugs, just starting, maturity of the product, whatever. So I had a direct line with the guru of PS. Cannot remember his name. I hope he remembers me, but I will call him and he would give me support right away to troubleshoot some issues there. But I did enjoy it a lot. It was a completely new concept, coming from being very technical, not interacting with people much, and trying to understand the functional world into this new tool, new technology, and try to provide service. That's how I started. But yeah, I'm still here today.
Did you learn it on the fly, or you had
Yeah.
the customer already, or did you have
Yep.
like a small period of time just straight into the customer with the books?
They gave me 2 weeks to transition between. Yep. They gave me 2 weeks.
Very appropriate. Yeah, very appropriate. In the
Yeah,
market.
very.
Yeah, absolutely.
It was a back-end consultant. We have a front-end people doing the implementation in the United States. I had the complexity of the language as well and the culture. So I had my counterpart consultant. She was working in, I think it was in Peoria. Cannot remember. This was a Caterpillar project. She was working in Peoria. I was the backend doing the configuration, and we will have a lot of conversations, and she would give me like the framework, and then it was all my investigation troubleshooting. But because I am very curious, and this is something that all functional consultants should have, you need to be very curious and very flexible and very open to say, oh, if I do this, what happens? So you try to break the system and try to do stuff and then see what is the effect, right? So that's how I started back there, long time ago.
And I'll repeat the question to Sylvia, how you started. But before that, I'd like to call out, especially for people who are not seeing the video, that Sylvia has a unicorn stuffed animal there that has a /H pin. For those of you who may be listening to this and have no idea what /H is, it's the debugging command for SAP. So yeah, I just wanted to describe that we have a little unicorn here with a /H. That if you're listening to this and you're not seeing the video, please go into the video. It's really pretty. Thanks.
And this is a gift from you, so.
I remember I had those done for. We were celebrating something. I think it was our first go live with a banking project or something like that. Another module that you could find nothing about, and we kind of trained on the fly.
That's true. We usually did that. I mean, it was on the fly. We debug and see what is inside and then fix the stuff. So yeah. Well, I started in Accenture. I think it was by chance because when HR from Accenture called me to tell me you have a job, they told me, okay, we want you to go to the QA team. And it was my first job. I didn't know what it was, but I said yes. A few days later, they call me. They tell me, Silvia, there is a chance that you start ABAP training. I didn't know what ABAP was, but I said yes because my first job, you want the job, you want the experience, you want something. And I said, yeah, sure, like, okay. So yeah, I started at the end of 2004. It was a month training in ABAP, like school. We call it here like little school, like something like this. And yeah, it was a month there in the training with all these books, paper books, because in that moment it was all paper books. And yeah, then I started after that month. I started in the project, the Caterpillar project, where Mercedes was also working. So yeah, I stayed there for a year and a half. Yeah, it was my learning during a year and a half of debugging most of it, because in that moment it was very difficult to find documentation, information. You couldn't Google something about ABAP and copy and paste like now. Now you have a lot of information, a lot of forums, a lot of open stuff. You have a lot of things now. In that moment, it was really hard to find something, to understand how it works. So yeah, it was a very interesting moment of using the /H all the time. But yeah, I'm very happy of the path that I did with ABAP. So yeah.
That's cool. I was going to ask. Still kind of doing the same, right? So Mercedes, you're implementing PS, and Silvia, you're writing ABAP.
Yeah.
What is your relationship with cloud, if any?
Apart from Gmail and social media?
Yes. That's
good answer. Good answer.
Yeah, that's a perfect answer.
This is a very interesting question. I haven't had the opportunity to actually interact directly with cloud applications or cloud products from SAP. I just saw them being implemented in some of the projects that I've been, but I haven't been touching them at all. One example is Ariba. But no, my exposure to the cloud applications it's just probably 0, I would say. Yep. Yeah,
Fair
meaning
enough.
getting my hands dirty, meaning, the consultant goes in, test it, see how it goes, test how the user perceives it and how flexible it is. I haven't tested that myself. I haven't had the opportunity. And I think it's because, in my case, the complexity of the clients that we do implementations is really, really high. And for some reason, it looks like the S/4HANA Cloud, they don't perceive it as a good fit. It's just my perception, not something that I directly, discuss with them. But
Yes.
yep, everything that I've been doing in the last few years is on premise.
Okay. Well, in my case, also, I'm also on premise. Also, in e-documents, we go down to 6.05 version, so I still don't have the new ABAP stuff because I need to go down low in the releases. I did a few things with Theoria because we have e-documents in cloud actually, and we are adding functionalities in the cloud. I did something with Theoria, but yeah, I'm mainly more on the on-premise ABAP, pure ABAP. So yeah, for me also cloud is a field that I know more because of the information I read. You try to be up to date because we are technical people. We need this to be updated all the
That's what we
time.
do. It's part of our life.
We are learning all the time. If we don't learn, we get bored. So it's like our nature is that.
Yes.
So I did, and I learn. I do the open SAP courses, but I didn't implement something yet. That, it's really I said I have experience in cloud. Now I deal with the other stuff. So yeah.
I am the only functional consultant here, so you three are technicals, right? So I've
Yes.
been
Yes, yes.
outnumbered.
You're
I've been
you're
outnumbered
outnumbered. You're
here.
surrounded by the enemy, I will say in some
Oh
cases.
wow.
No,
Just
no.
just in defense of the functional consultants, we also need to study a lot and learn a lot, and particularly,
This is
guys,
true. This is true.
simplification list, simplification list, simplification list. You need to know which one. What are the functionalities that is for HANA is not going to support anymore? It's not in the core HANA, so those are things that you need to know before designing, please.
Yes,
Anyway,
yes.
just
That's
a just a note there.
and that's a great note, Mercedes, because it starts with you, right? It starts with the functional consultants, with this fit and gap, and then we come in and try to fill in those gaps. But if you have not done your homework or stay up to date, we're gonna fill in gaps with a lot of Z, with a lot of custom, and we all know that
Yes.
that doesn't work out very nicely.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And I think that's one of the biggest problems that at least I see in this region. So I work a lot of years. I'm still working in Germany, and the experience that I have at least in Latin America is that what you were mentioning at the very beginning, versus it's like the lack of knowledge if you don't have direct access, right? So a lot of the things are coming up that were new. They are never well documented. They're never well structured, and therefore, if you per se, like in your case, you have you're very proactive and you just take it to heart and learn, and then you also try to develop this relationship with people from the product teams and so on and so forth to try to really understand how it's working. What ended up happening is something that I think all the technical people went through at some moment in their careers, like you ended up with a consultant, a functional consultant, that says, "Can you debug this code and tell me what it does?" And then you just /h and just start to find out what it is. And I'm not gonna say in which project, but it was a project that Lucia and I we were working. This happened to me every single day. It was AMS, we were doing application management services or support, and it was like, hey, like this is not working properly, and I think it should work like this, but maybe you can just /h and tell me what it does, and then I can tell you what you should do. And you're like, okay, fine. uh so but But there's not a lot. I'm not going to complain too much about my functional consultants that I work in the past. But there's not a lot of people like you, Mercedes, like take it to heart and take it very seriously and do things in that way. And in Latin America, we always make this joke about SAP, right? It's SAP with a because there is a lot of custom all over the place due to the lack of understanding of the standard. And I think this is one of the biggest issues that we're seeing today. And now I'm kind of doing a small segue. S4, right? So one of the biggest things that S4 is imposing right now is a series of best practices. And when you're coming from 15 years of having ECC or having older versions of SAP, right? What do you do? So how are you approaching today, Mercedes, this type of challenges?
I think best practices from SAP has been in my plan for quite some time. But unfortunately, I think it's due to the complexity of the implementations. We couldn't actually fully get the benefits of it. It's usually trying to see the best practices, and then you start, now with the Agile or Activate, you go to workshop base, and then you start to apply your best practices. But the more you try to apply them, the more you see how you get diverted into more complex processes. I think in the end, from my perspective, and only from the clients that I've been, I don't know about other people, I haven't actually been able to get the benefits of the best practices. It was not my experience. And usually the processes that we ended up were pretty complex. And they were no near the best practices. So I think complexity plays a huge role there. If it is a less complex company or organization, or they are trying to decrease those complexities and try to make it more simple, but at least do not lose efficiency, because that is something that they usually look for, then you might be able to get more adherence to it. But otherwise, my guys, the best practices, unless I move industries, right? I mean, utilities.
It's more customers,
yeah. Well, yeah, it depends on if it is a small company, or medium-sized company, and with low complexity. I think probably it's doable, but for the ones that I've been, no. Imagine that most of the last two projects, almost 4 years each in terms of complexity, and SAP was involved in both of them. As part of providing a service directly. I think they paid a premium service, and we had SAP there. But
and I think this is one of the biggest challenges with cloud overall, right? And Lucia, just give me your thoughts on this, and also Silvia. But your on-prem best practices doesn't fit complex processes for the most part. Now you're in cloud, best practices doesn't fit complex process, and on top of that, you cannot develop, right? Or not develop as we know it today. You are kind of restricted on how you extend the systems. You usually extend the systems outside of those systems, having satellite applications and so on and so forth. So this, for me, is kind of the biggest stopper, as I see it today, on having, forget about S4 cloud, right? I'm just talking about any cloud system that is kind of at the core of the company, and to model and support these very complex processes that we have been supporting for multiple customers over the 15-20 years. So what do you think about that, guys?
Yeah, I think it depends on, as Mercedes said, it's the complexity of the process, the customer. I think there are a lot of things related to that. It's very also. For example, I have a friend, she's in a big company working, and she told me that they wanted to go to cloud, but they are in ECC in a very low release. So doing this, it's like implementation. So for the company itself, not only the implementation, but the people who work there learning all this new stuff, it takes time, I mean, it's kind of a change of mind, change of the way of seeing how it works, the system works. I mean, cloud has a lot of benefits, but
Yeah.
maybe they don't see it, So they say it works, don't touch it, It's a phrase we heard a lot. If it works, don't touch it. And at the end, you're having a lot of issues after because during years you don't go and update your system. So then, going to cloud now is like very complex. I mean, it's really complex for the customer which didn't go and update their system in the past. So yeah, I think it depends on in each custom and in each implementation, all about these custom things we did. Some months ago, a friend of mine who is working in a customer that I was a long time ago, he sent me a photo, a picture of a program that I did like 2007. I don't recall, it's a long time ago. Using that, and it's like,
Yeah.
it's still working, right? And I was surprised. Okay, maybe someone went there and I don't know, did something better, but they are using all this stuff that I did a long time ago, still working, and I'm still surprised of that kind of situation. So then when you see that, how you go to cloud, how you
Yeah.
go to all this custom stuff. I mean, it's a very big process for the companies. I think they must do it because if they don't do it, they will lose customers, they will lose business, they will lose a lot of stuff. Now, I mean, with COVID, everything was like boom, like you need to increase your capability of selling of everything, and yeah,
Yes.
and how do you do that if you have a very old system in your company? The cost is very high. So yeah, I think it depends on the customer. For example, I see customers that like a lot the technology, so they have the last version of everything. They love
Hmm.
it. And they are the customers that are the ones that you get feedback, right? So you get feedback from them, and you say, okay, I can do this, I can do that. And if you hear the customer who likes technology, then you can go on a path that is useful for every customer or for many of them. So yeah, I think it depends on each situation.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a good point about the ECC to cloud. I think the journey actually, if you go from ECC to on-premise, it's not that easy. They give you, SAP provided several tools actually to do that analysis, particularly on the enhancements. When you see the
Yes.
OpenSAP training course and they teach you exactly how to do that conversion,
Hmm.
initially I thought, you just migrate the data and we use some tweaks and blah, blah, blah. But if the level of ABAP program is really high, the complexity and the processes are really critical to the business, then you need a little bit more brain into that. So it
Yes.
becomes some sort of an implementation, right? So that is a project. It's not just a conversion, just a
Oh
direct
yeah.
conversion. So you have a project, you need to analyze again, you need to see the efficiencies, what are you going to lose, what are you going to gain. So it's a lot of brain from functional consultants and technical consultants there. And data, do not forget data, because in S4HANA, the database is kind of different. So in FICO and logistics, the tables are different. So you need to make
Yes.
sure that all that migrates really nicely and everything works. So it's a project. It's like a new implementation project. And from S4HANA on-premise, I would say, into cloud, that journey, I think it is a little bit more challenging. So because all of the different things that we were just mentioning, right, is extending the S4HANA cloud, or the extensibility of it. I haven't actually seen it, but I know that you need to really know about the details on the extensibilities to see what are you going to gain and what are you going to lose. And if you have a lot of interfaces with legacy systems, well, just
Yeah.
I'm not sure about that. So there are several layers that you need to have in mind, and the culture of the client as well. Some clients, going to cloud is like, they are not, probably the culture is like, no, we are not still ready, we are not that agile, we are not that flexible. They still hold on into their legacy system. So it's a mindset. But yeah, you have several layers there. Anyway, that's my view as a functional consultant.
Yeah, I think it's very similar in a technical perspective as well, right? So I have this dilemma or debate with a lot of customers going as for managed, as for kind of cloud, for example, that is managed. versus those who say, I need access to the operating system and I want to use my own encryption and I want to know where my data is and I do not want anybody touching it. So there's also some aversion to somebody else managing stuff for you, right? And you started and said Gmail. Like for on the one hand, I find it interesting that most of these customers, I ask them if they know where their emails are hosted or if they have access to those operating systems, and they haven't even thought about it, right? But for whatever the reason, there's this mindset that they want to have access to the operating system of wherever their S4HANA system is. Sometimes, as you say, is the only option. I've seen a lot of customers that because of they have a lot of complexity in their customizations or their use cases. Alphabet, for example, our implementation at Google, it's so huge and there's a lot of cool stuff happening on it that we could never have it managed by somebody else. At least not in the state that it is today. And we love cloud. So it's not a problem about mindset. It's a technical thing. It's a technical approach that we want to, as you say, have all of these integrations with a lot of other systems, and we cannot do that in the versions of cloud that are managed as we know them today. So this brings me to two questions while the two of you were talking. How do you prep for cloud? Because you say you stay up to date, and I know for a fact that you stay up to date. How do you stay up to date with all these things that are coming up?
You want to go? Give it a go, Sil?
I think it's a difficult question because, I mean, if you want to be up to date, you have to follow the technology. I mean, you have to invest, right? Technology is money. You have to train the people that work in your company because they are doing the daily job plus learning new technology. So I think it's a change of the way of thinking of the people who is in charge of this kind of responsibility. If you want that your company has the best technology, you have to invest time, money, you have to train the people. I mean, there is a lot of things that you have to think about, and you have to think about the benefits that you will have long term. Okay, so it's a long way. It's not something quick that you invest and you gain the money immediately. So yeah, I think that would be the path if you really want to be up to it.
So I think in my case, I have three sources. The first thing that I started exploring a little bit more, it was the OpenSAP. So OpenSAP kept me up to date, at least with the high-level understanding on what the new things are. Now they're getting better and giving more examples and being more attached to reality, I would say, more real examples and things that will serve the purpose of your implementation on a daily basis, which is something that I look for. It's not just so theoretical that you will never get into reality. That is very important to me. Simplifications lists play a really good point into what I need for my conversations with the client, because they give me the framework. Okay, this functionality is still here. It's not part of the core HANA. It's going to be decommissioned soon. So I try to avoid designing into those functionalities that are going to disappear. But by saying this, and this is a point of improvement for SAP, they have been releasing simplification lists saying, this particular functionality is going to be decommissioned soon, but you don't know when, and you don't know by what. And there is no other available product. So that's challenging for functional consultants when you really don't have the information. So there is where, the programs or ABAPs come into play, and then you have this very expensive development, and that is something that it brings a little bit of a problem. And the third one is blogs. So the one thing that Lucia taught me is people are starting blogging now and putting their own opinions and information on Brain. And the blogs of SAP were actually amazing because they give you so much knowledge and this knowledge sharing that you didn't have at the beginning of SAP when we started a long time ago. there was this tendency of not sharing information. So you will be, a very knowledgeable consultant, and they will pay you more, but you will never share documentation with anybody. It was a very rare type of a strategy back then, but that got broken in time and say, okay, people now are sharing information around the world. We are collaborating. And it is not about just holding on into the knowledge. It's about sharing and show that you know and put it out there so people can see what your expertise is, kind of a marketing of your own persona. So those are basically the three topics. And of course, companies pay you certification and manuals and whatever, and the learning hub or whatever we have there. But I find the most valuable part of all is actually the blogs. I like reading the blogs of people in the Open SAP. So yeah, that is a good thing. That's how I keep myself up to date. And it's good when they tell you exactly what doesn't work well. Because when you know that, you know how to divert into trying to find the best solution. It's not about, all unicorns and rainbows, you know? You need to know exactly.
Here it is, but yeah.
Yeah. We try to, get into that realm, but of course, reality hit us hard every day. And yeah, it's not all unicorns and rainbows, and we need to be aware of those things to tell the clients, okay, this is not that great, and we can, take this diversion, or you can just, have this tool or this functionality. So that's how I usually do it on my side.
And as a short follow up for both of you, because I think will most likely resonate, and I think we all have the same answer, but I just want to hear from you guys. Is it personal time or is it working time when you're upskilling yourself?
Wow. For me, it's depending on my level of obsession on the topic.
There you go.
If I am really obsessed, and usually I get obsessed about a couple of things, yeah, I do it outside working hours. It's pretty full on when I am working. In some of the projects implementations, particularly when they are highly complex and they try to make it agile, it's very, very hard to try to find focus time to sit down and you need at least a minimum of 2 hours to start reading something, and then you get into the system and try to play around. It's a minimum of 2 hours, and you did only 1% of what you wanted to do. So yeah, it's outside hours, and yeah, I like playing around and trying to have an environment where I can actually test. Otherwise, it doesn't get wired into my brain. So it's not about theoretical. I just need to apply some stuff outside.
Gotcha.
Mostly outside our working hours, yeah.
Yeah. And for you, Sil?
Yeah, well, for me, the last years, I would say I learned in the process of working, right? So working inside SAP, you have a lot of information. So I learn things all the time. So I need to learn all the time, and I do that during work. But for example, this year I started something that is not related to SAP directly, but things that can help in the future for other stuff. So, for example, I'm learning JavaScript. I learn HTML, CSS. I mean, I learning other stuff. I will learn Python. I think that I think it's two moments. One is working, that you have to deliver something and you have to learn for delivering, and then it's the moment that you want to learn something extra, that maybe it's about SAP or maybe it's about other stuff that you like. So yeah, I think it's more, if I'm interested in the topic, I learn it after hours. I mean, it's not during the working.
Perfect.
That's a great cue for another question that I have for the both of you. What do you think is the path forward? Because Silvia, you mentioned learning web and full stack development for the future, and that is not related to SAP. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think that I'm trying to open my technical knowledge in other ways. I have to say in HTML and CSS I'm very bad. Very bad. So also in
Well, now you
design,
know. Now you know.
no, I was very happy because I had a unicorn and a picture of a unicorn and I made it rotate like this, and I was really happy with that. And I said, it's like a child. But I was very happy about this because in ABAP I do gray stuff. ABAP is gray and cold, so. But then when I had to do my own web page, I say I don't know anything about design. So design, is really something very hard for me because I'm more of part of the coding. I don't design stuff. But yeah, for example, I'm learning JavaScript, and for the iFlows, the e-documents, it's very useful because of the script. I mean, it's a mixture of things that I can use at work, and I can use maybe in another thing that I want to start in the future. I don't know really. So yeah, I think I'm trying to open to other stuff that is not ABAP. I love ABAP a lot. I mean, I really like to be a backend developer. I really like my job, but I need something new to, yeah, like a challenge, something that challenges me. So
This is a very hard question for me. I was expecting cloud to be more into the ERP of S4HANA, but it didn't happen. So one of the first questions that came to my head is why all these ECC clients that are still out there are not actually massively migrating into cloud or in more numbers. And usually you realize about those on the ads. When you get, we are looking for consultant for cloud implementation or cloud expertise and blah, blah, blah. And back in the day when Silvia and I started, and you too, Lucia, you used to see, at least in Latin America, a huge amount of ads looking for ECC consultants for implementation. I think 3 or 4 years ago, I started to wonder why we were not finding those in the ads anymore, at least in this part of the world. Now I am here in Asia Pacific. It's not happening, or at least not massively. So I think there has to be some sort of a strategy that needs to change to convince client to go to the cloud in a way that is easy for them, in a way that is still efficient, in a way that is cost effective. And that is something that I put that to the table. I don't really have much knowledge about why it's not happening, but the reality is that it's not happening at the moment. I think the future is cloud. They just need to figure out what is the strategy, and they need more exposure and more big successful cases. So, other clients, because that is what usually clients look for. They say, okay, if these clients, because the clients talk to each other, everybody knows this, right? If any of those clients had a very successful ERP implementation and it was a cloud one, very complex, whatever, and then they want to know exactly what is the experience. In the current client, they used to call other clients and they, talk to each other and see what were your challenges and everything else. I think it's a little bit slow right now, but we will get there. At some point, we will need to see some change in the strategy that the companies are taking to bring big companies or complex companies into cloud. And it's not only to one ERP, it could be just a variety of products interacting well with each other that would bring value to the client. But for that, you need very good architects, solution and technical. And my exposure to those roles hasn't been that much, and I haven't seen many. I think that is a role that still needs to grow a lot into this IT world, particularly for the cloud applications. That's my view on it.
Yeah, no, that's a really good point, because I think for the most part, people who are coming from rolling from the SAP backend development, right, as an ABAP developer, it is and now you're talking with cloud applications, different architectures, different technologies, different ways of integrating these things. The transition is not easy, and on top of that, like the company that they're working for, should have the vision to invest money and time to train, upskill, understand this. And that is why I was asking that question before. For the most part, we always take on training on our personal times because we're obsessed with the things that we do, right? So it's not something that I don't know any accountant, for example, that is not working in systems or anything like that. It's like, I'm obsessed about taxes. Let me read this new this new law about taxes. But we like all of us, all our friends, everybody, co-workers, we are all insane, and we're Saturday night when my daughters go to sleep, my wife goes to sleep, it's like, it's time to take a training, which doesn't make any sense whatsoever. But in some way, it does make sense, and that's what we do, right? But these transitions into these new roles that doesn't exist is definitely takes a lot of time. This comes, with the topic of adoption that we were discussing before. It's adoption of the solutions, adoption of the architectures, climbing this ladder of knowledge. And some people, they just don't want to do it. It's just, well, I'm comfy with what I'm doing, and I'm good with this. So it's pretty hard. But it's definitely very interesting to see where do we end up, in the next 5 years. We know, as all of you were saying, we'll end up in the cloud. We don't know how yet, but somehow, the industry, the market will get there.
Yes, that for sure. I would add that I do see clearly, because my role is in that Google Cloud, so I do see a lot of customers lifting and shifting as they are into Google Cloud. But it makes me a little sad. It kind of breaks my heart every time that I see they just lifted and shifted. And that in itself has a lot of benefits, right? Like the high availability. There's cool stuff just to stop having that physical connection to that server and putting it for somebody else to manage, and it never goes down and all of that sweet stuff. But it still breaks my heart to see developers, especially developers, not kicking the tires with everything that opens up. And that's one of the things that I think I join with the rest of the vocal people in the community that say trials are so important, because you both said it. You need to be able to touch what's coming. You need to be able to actually experience to learn. And as long as there's not a trial for whatever it is you want to experience, that doesn't fly, right? On the other side, if people who are listening want to get into a trial, I just would like to remind you that most of the cloud providers provide some kind of a free tier. Not just Google Cloud, but the others also provide a free tier. So if I were starting today in the SAP world, I would probably tell myself to go down the path that I've been, but still not stick myself only to SAP technologies. I would probably give myself the advice to go kick the tires of a backend or full stack like Silvia is doing. Go kick the tires of other cloud solutions that are not SAP, like Mercedes is in the future. And that same question for you. What do you think would be the advice you would give to yourselves if you were starting today?
Oh, wow. My brain just exploded.
You need more mate to reflect.
No, I think one of the things that I did regret a lot from being a functional consultant back then is not being able to apply creativity or innovation, because you are in the framework or what a module tells you to do. This is the configuration, and then a little bit of creativity on creating ABAP programs with your counterparts like Silvia, right? So you work in a collaboration and you envision all this program to happen and you design and everything else. But for me, the level of creativity there was not like very high compared to probably what you can do now if you expand your view as a functional, as a solution architect. You have more variety and more creativity on how to play around with all these different pieces and softwares. So I will not right now I am there. I am so much into SAP at the moment, and my expertise takes me there. But I think getting diverse knowledge and diverse types of designs and exposure to different softwares and different views, right? Each software tells you a different story on how they were designed and the capabilities and flexibilities and how can you apply innovation there. In my case, I've only seen one, which is not great. Guys, do not do that. To people out there, try to diversify your knowledge into, I don't know, Salesforce or other cloud applications that are great. And what I found, particularly with the young consultants that enter the SAP world, they see Fiori, right? So we have this new user experience right now, but they experience other cloud application like more appealing and more dynamic and more flexible than sometimes what some SAP screens can look like. So yeah, I would tell myself, get into this solution architecture realm. I think for me, as of now, I have this hunger for more creativity, for more design, for how do we connect this and make it better, and how do we find a better solution to the client than just sticking with one product and try to expand into that little world.
Silvia,
Silvia?
do you have any thoughts?
Yeah, I'm thinking because when I started, I just said the documentation or the information we had was very less. I mean, we didn't have much. So in that moment, it was very difficult. I mean, technology grew a lot in these years. It's been 15, more than 15 years that I'm working on ABAP. In that moment, it was very difficult to learn new stuff. Now you go to YouTube and you learn something new for free, and you decide when to learn it, right? So I would say that people that start now should open their minds. I mean, not only want to do one thing, open their minds and use these tools that technology has for free. And so try to see if you like something else. Just try. I mean, look at YouTube video, read something. So start digging in what you really like, or what is that your improves your imagination, or where you can use that. So yeah, I think it's a good moment to learn stuff because they are for free online, and yeah, you can do it.
Diego, you've been quiet, but I'm sure you have thoughts on this.
That's okay. I mean, yes, sure. So, per, so what will be my advice to myself, or what do I recommend today to anybody who's starting? Uh,
The second, if they're not the same.
Okay, so today what I will say is just diversify, and I'm not saying anything different than the Mercedes and Silvia said, but having the ability to be diverse on your technical knowledge and functional eventually, right? For me, is kind of the key thing, and it's something that I'm working on. As you know, as the rest of you, I'm pretty obsessed with my job. So I started, doing ABAP at the very beginning when I was working at Accenture as well. But since then, I never stopped, right? So I learned JavaScript like 10 years ago when we were starting at Savanta, and just doing web applications, Angular and React and Fiori, and then Node, and then Python, and then, and it's never going to end, sadly, for myself and my family. But I'm torturing all of them. But I think as today, there is like 3 or 4 really interesting cloud solutions that if you're starting your career, and also you can have one foot on the SAP classic world, and then you can just take a look at success factors, or take a look at ServiceNow, for example, or or Anaplan, that we a couple of times, you'll see I mention Anaplan. It is imperative for you to have a diverse background, especially if you're starting. If you are already 10, 15, 20 years in, you're definitely going to still able to get a job. There's people that works in COBOL they're getting $250 an hour. Yeah, I know, right? But this still is super well paid because there is
I know.
nobody else. Everybody already died. So now you're in the other side of the curve. So
The
there is always going
dinosaurs.
to be yes.
Really
So there is
dinosaurs.
there is always going to be work for everyone. But I think, and this is something that we all feel very dear about, it's like passion about what we do, right? And have fun and grow and feel that you're expanding, right? That for me is kind of the key thing about what I do every day. But Lucia, now we all ask you, so what do you
Yes,
think about this topic?
there you go.
Well, as I said before, the advice to myself is keep your mind open and kick the tires of other technology. It's tricky in all of technologies. I think that if whoever signs up for a career in technology, and that doesn't mean going to university, just suddenly you're in technology, unless you like it, as you say, Diego, you won't be as effective and you're probably going to burn out because it's very
Yeah.
you need to put a lot in it. You need to put a lot of time and energy and thought into it. So if you don't like it, if you're not passionate about it, it's probably a good time to move on. But if you are passionate about it, keep, as Silvia was saying, use the available resources. There's a lot of free stuff that you can go and test. I find it fascinating how we go from one thing into the next, right? Like I was talking to a customer who was saying, "Well, I'm trying to go into the cloud," and they were looking at Cloud Foundry. I'm like, "Hold on, Cloud Foundry has been declared almost defunct. You need to start into Kubernetes, and you're a little bit late to the game," which at the same time is good news. Like it's when you have, I don't know, a new phone coming out into the market and you wait a little bit for others to test it. Same thing happens with technology. Some things stick, some things do not stick. And we're learning all the time. I mean, we fall in love with technologies and suddenly somebody decides that there's something better, so you go and look something better. And we need to be open, keeping our heads open and kicking the tires. I think that's the best piece of advice that I would give to people. Do not just stick to reading about it. Kick the tires if you can. Test it yourself. Test what other people are doing. Figure out what other people are doing as well. And this applies at the SAP world as well. Like, do not, and again, I used to be part of the marketing machine. Do not just stick to what the marketing machine is telling you. Do not just take what SAP is telling you or anybody. Just say, and I do this myself, this is how we do stuff at Google, but I want to know how they do it at Azure and how they do it at AWS, because none of us is the holder of the absolute truth and best designs. And that, going back to being an architect, as you say, Mercedes, it gives you options, it gives you choice. That's the one thing that I adore about cloud, or what cloud is to me. Cloud is about choice, and it's the opposite of how we started. We started at SAP with SAP telling us this is how you do it, and this is the stack that you use, this is how you develop, and these are the best practices. As you move away from it, you have a lot of choice. You have a lot of different languages, frameworks, options within those same languages and frameworks, versions, and so forth. And you have to pick your own path. You can only pick your own path if you know enough about all the options, right? So it's fascinating to be in technology, and at least I love it. Before we close, I'd like to thank you both for being here today. Anything you would like to say? Any comments?
No, for me, it's great to be part of this conversation. I think we need more voices out there. We need more ideas, things that we can share in the different paths, you know. I think the choice part idea for me is something that needs to be in the minds of every person in technology. People need to choose their own adventures and have common sense to see, okay, what is the future, which is difficult to grasp sometimes. You don't know where where the future is going. Sometimes we learn things today and in 5 years it's dead and say, oh, what do I do now? So you need to have that flexibility to see where your passion takes you, what adventure you would like to take next. And thank you guys. It was great to be in this conversation.
Yeah, I wanted to thank you also for the invitation. It was very nice to talk about all these topics. So thank you, Lucia and Diego, for inviting me to participate on the podcast. And I hope a lot of people see it and like it. So right?
Absolutely. Big thanks, from my side, for showing us and being such a great guest. I also want to take, before we close, an opportunity to thank to all our friends and family who subscribe to our channel on YouTube, because this is how it works. It's friends and family always. So thanks to all of you, to all the listeners and everyone who subscribe. We already hit the 100 milestone that we had, that we were just setting out for a full month, and we hit it almost in a week. So that was awesome. So thanks everyone again, and yeah, we're coming up on Spotify, and coming soon also on Google Podcast. So stay tuned with that. And with that being said, I'm just going to hand it over to Lucia for the closings.
Absolutely. Thanks again to everybody listening. Thanks, Mercedes, Silvia, Diego, for joining me today. If you haven't done so already, please subscribe into our YouTube channel and stay tuned. It's been a pleasure. See you next month.